Hello, my name's Greg, and I have a few things to talk to you about today. And, politics and religion are probably the biggest things in our lives. Now, we may not care much about politics, we may not care much about religion, but both of those things have accounted for most of the wars and the deaths, and most definitely the strife among man, woman, country, and country. And one of the things I'm often asked, and this is part of this series, is on the religious side. Lots of people ask me to answer very tough questions. Now, I'm not a minister, and I would say if you have a specific spiritual question to ask, to seek the guidance of a minister. But that being said, I believe through my own spiritual journey that I don't want to say I've obtained wisdom from God, because that's something that God for himself decides. But I do feel like, at least in my own life, I've received some sort of peace, inner peace and understanding. And before I lose you, because I know a lot of my viewers may not be interested in religion, may be turned off by religion. Some of you may be atheists, agnostics, Gnostics, from other religions, Muslims, Hindu, Buddhists, and that's fine. I am a Christian. I'm a very conservative Christian, but understand, first and foremost, I'm not going to condemn you. Yes, I believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven, but before I lose you, understand that that is what my Bible tells me. It strictly tells me that Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father. Now, I'm not going to condemn you if you don't believe that. What I want to talk about more importantly is the concept, why do bad things happen to good people? Or why do bad things happen at all? A lot of people have asked me, if God is a loving God, why can a 2-year-old child be abducted and killed? I've heard people say, if there's a loving God, how could my baby die? I've heard people say, if God is a loving God, how could people starve? If God is a loving God, how could I have AIDS? Or if God is a loving God, how can there be serial killers who capture young, beautiful children or teenagers, exploit them, rape them, dismember them, do the most vile things that you could possibly imagine? If there's a loving God in heaven, how could he possibly see good in that? Well, you first have to understand that there is good and bad in the world. You see it every day. There's no real argument that there is good and bad. What people define as good and bad, what people define as moral and not moral, has become very debatable today, and that's where politics comes in. A lot of people on the liberal side define moral as, are you taking care of your fellow man? Whereas people on the more conservative side define moral along the terms of, are you being obedient to God? And that's a big disconnect. You can debate that, and we will do that in a future episode. What is true morality? What viewpoints? Why do people see morality from a liberal viewpoint and a conservative viewpoint? But the very most important thing that I want to talk about in a short YouTube video, because I know a lot of people are out there hurting grief. I lost my grandmother, who was like a mother to me, the most precious woman in the entire world. And as you see now, it's been 20 years, 22 years to be exact, since I've lost her. But she used to bring me breakfast in bed. She used to help me make pizza out of things in the garden. I loved the woman more than anything in the world. She's a great Christian woman. And I always, when she had several strokes and she had several cardiovascular problems, I would feel so bad. And she said, why do you feel bad? I'm soon going home to be with the Lord. And I admired that faith. And some people might say, well, that's blind faith. What does it matter? It's faith. But it was faith for her, and she truly believed it, and I believed it. And when she told me when she was near her death that she saw angels around her bedside, I don't believe that's a figment of her imagination. I don't believe that that's some chemical part of the brain that's dying. There have been too many instances of that, of those scenarios. I believe that that's God's way of comforting us in the worst times. But you know, I know we go through the human grieving process when something bad happens, and that's a natural death. She was 81. She died. But I still grieved her. But I knew and I had faith. And I told people, I'll see her again in heaven one day. And you know, that gives hope and comfort to people. But you say, how could that possibly even remotely come close to the death of, say, a child? I think back to some of the most horrendous killings of young, innocent children in the United States by serial killers, decapitations. I know these are distasteful things to hear, but think about this. If the soul is the most important thing, if your soul lives forever, and if you're a Christian and you believe that your soul lives forever, would you sacrifice eternal life with your soul to keep your child alive here on earth, but their soul never make it to heaven for damnation, for hell, for whatever you believe, purgatory, just total isolation from God, whatever your view of heaven is? Would you sacrifice? Would you say, I want my child to live a full, healthy life here and then soul be lost forever? Or would you say, I trust God with my child, and if my child suffers here on earth and then lives for eternity in heaven with me, that's more important? You got to answer that question, because that's how I started viewing things. And when you start viewing things from that perspective, you start to better understand God. Because why does God allow things like that to happen? Well, I started thinking about it. And it's something that had been pouring over me for a long time. We don't understand the makings and the workings of God. It's sort of like, and think about this for a moment. People always ask me, why would this happen? Okay, imagine this. There are starving children in Africa. You know, they need food to survive. There's a cow out in the pasture. If we kill that cow, dismember that cow, cook that cow, and feed it to those children, there's a good chance they'll survive. Now go tell that to the cow. Okay, I'm waiting. I mean, it's not a joke, and I realize this is a serious subject, but the cow's not going to understand. I mean, you're not going to go up and whisper to the cow, hi, I know you don't understand this. I know you're just going about your business, but I'm going to kill you in the most terrible way. I'm going to cut your head off. I'm going to cut you into pieces. I'm going to eat you because you're going to serve a higher purpose. Do you think the cow would get it? And even if the cow did get it, do you think that he would accept that as a higher purpose? No. One, he can't understand it, or she can't understand it. And two, if they did, they couldn't fathom what that would do. Now think of it this way, and I don't mean to belittle anything. The suffering that you as a family go through death and other problems is immeasurable. And I don't mean to belittle it. But to give hope, how many times have you seen the family of a child who has been abducted or has died stand in front of a camera and say, my child is with God in heaven right now, and that's the only peace I have? If even one person out there in the world, that little angel, that little child who died, if even one person in the world, or 1,000 or 1,000,000, saw that broadcast and it changed their soul and said, I wish I could have that faith of those parents. If my child died, I could not deal with that. It would be the end of my world. But if I could have that peace in my heart to know that my child, I'm going to see my child again, someday. I'm going to see my grandmother, my father, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, my friend.